Good morning, everyone. My name is Carol Beck. I'm with the Center for Contemplative Science and Compassion-Based Ethics at Emory University, and it's my great honor and pleasure to welcome His Holiness back for our second day of the global launch of Sea Learning, and also to welcome all of you for the proceedings today. Just a quick reminder to please silence your cell phones. And now I'd like to introduce the Executive Director of the Center for Contemplative Science and Compassion-Based Ethics, Dr. Lobsang Tenzin Negi.
Good morning, Your Holiness. I hope you had a good sleep. And good morning, everyone. This morning session, we will begin with the presentation on online platform of Sea Learning. Your Holiness, in 2015, when we first received the instruction from Your Holiness to develop the secular ethics framework and some sample curriculum, I received this instruction to develop along with my colleague Geshe Laktola and Geshe Datu Namgela. We were really nervous how to go about this. But I must say that Your Holiness's vision for educating the heart and mind is so vast and so inspiring that whoever we reach out to help, everyone just came and gave 100%, beyond 100% of the support. So thanks to many people who have worked on Sea Learning over the years, we are here at the point where we can truly bring it globally. And but bringing a program at a global level has its own challenges as well. We recognized that very quickly in 2017, as we were training some of the educators how to teach Sea Learning. We realized that it was impossible for our small team to be able to travel and offer these workshops in places where they were receptive of, even though at a very early stage, we were not able to see how we could fulfill that. But thanks to the others who have suggested us and given us the necessary support to create an online platform. An online platform is the way to go to bring Sea Learning material throughout the world, as all the material in Sea Learning are open source, that it will be available to anyone, everywhere, anywhere in the world. So online platform allows us to bring the material to everywhere and also to train the teachers. One of the things that we recognize, but also the science also tells us that the programs that work best are the programs where the teachers receive the best training. And therefore, for us to provide the training to the teachers around the world, online platform, even though it is not the perfect, but it can provide a basic orientation for the teachers. So, and another crucial component of the Sea Learning or the platform is that this is a new program, although it's social, emotional, and ethical learning, as you have heard, has many benefits, even academically, and of course health and pro-social behaviors and so forth and so on. But Sea Learning is a new program. It brings many elements that are missing in other social emotional learning programs, as Dr. Daniel Goleman, the very kind of the person who shaped this movement, has noted. But this program has to be tested. So therefore, we need to have a robust research, and that is what online platform allows. I would like now to introduce to the presenters here. Dr. Tara-Lynn Frazier is our in-house scientist at Emory at the Center for Contemplative Science and Compassion-Based Ethics. A brilliant scientist. We are very fortunate to have her, and she's already has done enormous how to work designing how to measure the program as we move on. Dr. Brendan Rosati Silvia, you have already heard him speak, and Brendan is, as I mentioned, I would think the word would be polymath, that he's a person. I was asking what the meaning of the polymath would be, and apparently this means that a person with expertise in many fields. Brendan truly is an emerging polymath. So we are very, very thankful to have a very strong and very talented, very committed team at Emory University, and the two of them will be presenting the online platform to Your Holiness this morning.
Thank you so much, Geshe-la. Thank you, Your Holiness, for being with us here. Thank you all for coming back for our second day of our launch. It's my great pleasure to begin this presentation. Try to begin. We can begin now. I just want to say that, as Geshe-la said, Your Holiness, your call was to create a global movement. And you're always emphasizing that we need to reach so many people in the world. There are 7 billion people in the world. And to reach 7 billion people is a great challenge. We have now with us the technology of the 21st century. And Your Holiness, I recall you were asked during the press conference a question about the negative effects of technology, and you said technology by itself is not a bad thing, it's how we use it. In order to answer Your Holiness's call, we felt that it's absolutely necessary that we use technology. But when people hear the term online platform, online training, maybe you don't get very excited. In fact, you want a face-to-face training. And we understand that. We will continue to do that. But we would ask that you all give this platform a chance. It's an innovative way to find a solution for the problems that we face. So we knew we needed a solution that would help us to address the high demand for the C-learning curriculum. We see the incredible response that we have here. So many people, over 1,000 people coming to this launch, many more, tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands watching online, and who will continue to watch this launch. So how do we address that demand? Our ability to travel in person and do trainings and support in person is limited. So even though we continue to do that, we don't want to keep people waiting to receive these materials. We have to allow these materials to go out. And then we also need to provide ongoing support, because even when we go in person and provide a workshop or a training, then people get excited, they start using the curriculum. Then what happens 6 months later, 1 year later, when they have questions and they need support, and they want us to come back again and again and again. What we found, Your Holiness, is that, as Your Holiness has said many times, we have the inner seed of compassion, we have the basis of compassion. And children have this. And they also have the ability to explore and to engage in critical inquiry themselves. They have the ability to look at their own experiences. So we've tried to create the curriculum in a way where, even without a lot of preparation and training, educators can begin exploring this with their students. And so what we really want to say to all those here and all those watching is give this a chance. Even if you have a prejudice against an online platform, and you don't have to wait for us to come. Take the course. It is free. It's open to everyone. In fact, we're very happy that it just went live last night, I think. So you're among the first people. And we tried to create an online training that will be better, more interesting than anything that you have seen before. There's a lot of experiences of our educators. You saw them yesterday afternoon, but you will see that also built into the platform. And this is just the first stage of the platform. With your experiences and your input, it will get better and better and better. So please give it a chance. You'll be able to download the curriculum at the end of it and start trying it with your students. You don't need to, once you use the online platform, you have permission to try it and see what happens. Because I think, as you saw yesterday, you'll be surprised by the experiences that your teachers and students have. You will be surprised by their innate capacities, their innate wisdom and compassion coming out through the experiences you have. And then, you will be able to share your experiences. So please feel empowered to begin this journey. Don't wait. The time is now. So the majority of the presentation will be given by my colleague, Dr. Fraser, who will go through the various aspects of the platform and the orientation course.
Thank you, Brenda. Can you hear me? Hello?
Just give them a second. Keep saying.
Hello? Wonderful. Okay. So yes, we're so excited that this finally went live. I'm going to take you through the structure of the platform. First of all, the primary goals of this platform are to help orient educators and to prepare them to begin bringing C learning into their classrooms. We want to build this platform as a space where they can find support and connect with other educators as well. And those are pieces that we'll talk about in just a minute. The platform consists of 7 modules. When you enter into the first module, you get it's sort of the introductory space. But before you get to the first module, you'll see this screen right here. It tells you that you can either begin the course. The course is called C101. It's a beginning orientation course. You can begin to connect with others, and you can also access other resources. So in this first page, you don't have to register. This is where you just go into the site, you start to see what C Learning is about. You have access to some of the curriculum, not all of it, but some of it, so that you can get an idea of what you're getting into and what this thing is. Once you start to go into the C101 course, this is when you begin the orientation. And in the C101 course, you have the first module. In the first module, when you enter in, you're going to be asked to register. And the registration just collects information about who you are, where you're from, and things like that. Once you register, you're actually going to go into a consent page. Now, this program is infused with research, as we've talked about many times. It's very important to us. And so it may be a bit abrupt going into that first consent page. It is optional. We don't want that to, we don't want you to see that and feel like you have to say, what is this that I'm seeing, and move on and say, or this isn't for me. You can move on if you want. We ask that you opt into research because it is very helpful for us, but of course that is your choice. Once you finish Module 1, which gives you an orientation about what this whole training is going to be about, you're going to move into Module 2. And Module 2 is about empowering students. And we hope in this module that educators learn about some of the barriers and challenges that we know you face, but also how C Learning provides tools to help students engage in a way that supports their handling of these barriers and challenges. The next module, which is Module 3, begins to bring the educator into the framework. This starts to orient them towards an understanding of what we mean by awareness, what we mean by compassion, and what we mean by engagement. and how it is through the understanding of awareness, compassion, and engagement for oneself, for others, and for common humanity that we can begin to support students. Then we move into Module 4, and this is when you get to sort of the heart of the curriculum. It's very straightforward. We break down the different components of the curriculum. We try to help you understand some of the sort of pedagogical models through which we have developed this curriculum. We give you some experiences from the voices of educators, many of which you've heard from already, who are here today and were here yesterday. And you'll also hear some voices from students as well. As Brendan was saying, we've built into this training, hopefully, some very interactive and engaging and innovative activities. So this isn't just going to be a list of things. It's going to be sort of very, very experiential. The other thing is that as you're going through this, you're going to be asked reflexive questions. And those reflexive questions will be to help you develop out strategies so that you can actually bring this into your community. So there'll be questions like, what are some of the challenges or barriers that you face based on whatever content item that you've been presented? This next module, Module 5, talks about fostering capabilities within students. Within the framework, we have enduring capabilities. These enduring capabilities are actually the skills that we're trying to enable students to foster so that they can actually be more aware, more compassionate, and more engaged for themselves, for others, and common humanity. And of course, in Module 6, we have to turn it back on the educators themselves. This was strategic that we made this one of the last modules, because we knew that educators would come into this training wanting to do what they can for their students, wanting to do what they can for their classrooms, and wanting to do what they can for their schools. But we cannot forget ourselves. And so this is where educators begin to explore their own strengths and their own areas of growth with regards to the enduring capabilities. Finally, in Module 7, all those barriers and challenges and solutions that you've been working through reflections that were presented throughout the training will be compiled here into a plan. We call it My Plan. And so we'll have a list of all of the responses that you've engaged, and you'll get this My Plan that you can print out, take with you, carry into your classroom, and use it as a guidepost for how you're going to bring C-learning into your classroom and retain it and keep going with it. Once you finish the whole training, and once you've gone through the My Plan, you'll have access to downloading the full curriculum. We don't want to use this training as a barrier to the full curriculum, but we do want to motivate you to go through this orientation. It shouldn't take more than about 3 or 4 hours, and you can plan out how that works for you in your schedule and your time. At the end of the training, you will get a certification of completion that you can bring to your administrators, or you can use in whatever way is important for you in your setting. At the end of the training, you will have evaluation. As we said, when you opt into the research, what happens is at the very beginning, we'll take baseline surveys of some of your attitudes and beliefs and various things that are important to us with regards to monitoring. And at the end of the training, you will see some of these surveys again. And that's just to give us an understanding about how the training might be affecting or influencing some of the specific domains we are interested in understanding. You will also have a course evaluation, and this is very important to us. And one thing to remember, that this entire program has evolved and changed and responded to feedback. And this is another place of feedback. So please be willing and open to go through that. It's very helpful for us. Now, this is just a beginning. We have many plans for this platform. We want to continue with more specialized courses, courses for administrators, more courses for educators to support deeper personal practice. We want to build out the community space so that it can be supportive and responsive in the way that the educators need. We want to have a facilitator training and support program, which you'll hear more about this afternoon. We want to build out parent resources and hopefully eventually a parent training course as well. And we want to translate the platform into as many languages as we possibly can, because we want it to reflect the global nature of our program. So that's our platform, and we're very excited that it's being launched. Would you like to say something?
Your Holiness, would you have any questions to them about the platform or any
George,
or
question.
any personal remarks?
I don't know. Wonderful. I appreciate your sort of explanation. Wonderful. No special question.
Thank you so much, Your Holiness. So in that case, then we will move to our next part, which would be the keynote address by Your Holiness, and that is on preparing children for changing world, infusing discernment and compassion into action. Yesterday, Your Holiness, you spoke about the importance of utilizing our intelligence to broaden and deepen our compassion. And we would very much like to hear, Your Holiness, that how the education of heart and mind can be one where the reason and the intelligence can be, instead of obstacle to compassion, can add to compassion, and compassion can, and discernment can go hand in hand in educating the whole child. In order to introduce Your Holiness, I would like to invite Dr. Gary Hawk. Dr. Gary Hawk is has served for over 30 years as the Vice President of the Emory University. And I would not say much except one anecdote, and that is that this program would not be where it is today without Dr. Hawk. In 1995, when His Holiness the Dalai Lama visited Emory University, Dr. Hawk led a committee to meet with His Holiness to propose a partnership with His Holiness to collaborate on education, how His Holiness and Emory together can contribute to the education. And that's what all this got started, and it's a great privilege to have Dr. Hawk introduce His Holiness. Thank you.
Thank you, Lobsang, for that generous introduction. Good morning to all of you. Good morning, Your Holiness. The program says I am to introduce a man who, of course, needs no introduction. His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, is known to all of us who hold him in the utmost high regard, and who is, in fact, the reason why we are all here. So let us dispense with the notion of introducing him. Instead, let me say something brief about Emory University and the experience that we have had in coming to know His Holiness over more than 3 decades. Emory was founded nearly 200 years ago by followers of an English priest named John Wesley, whose life was changed by what he later described as the warming of his heart in a moment of introspection. From that moment, he sought to change his oppressive and limited English society through the education and what he called the union of knowledge with vital spiritual practice. In other words, through the education of the mind and the heart. You can see here a theme we've been hearing about for the past day. The education of heart and mind, in a way, is in the DNA institutionally of Emory. His Holiness first visited Emory actually in the fall of 1987, 2 years before he received the Nobel Peace Prize. He came at the invitation of a professor named John Fenton, who studied and taught about the religions of India. Professor Fenton found deep and everlasting joy in going to meet the Dalai Lama at his hotel in Atlanta and riding back to the campus where His Holiness spoke to a packed auditorium. When next His Holiness visited Emory, the year was 1995, as you have heard, and he was a rock star, a Nobel laureate, and importantly, harbinger of what many hoped would be an era of harmony and justice at the end of the Cold War and the beginning of a new millennium. The president's office at Emory received a phone call from a local committee that was organizing a visit to Atlanta by the Dalai Lama. They needed a very large space for a public talk. Could Emory accommodate an audience of 4,000? Well, yes, we could, and His Holiness came once again. In my memory of that visit, two experiences above all others stand out. The first is the privilege of being part of that delegation that my friend Lobsang referenced when administrators and professors visited His Holiness at his hotel suite to propose a partnership between our university and the institutions of Tibetan Buddhist learning in Dharamsala. His Holiness thought that sounded fine, but suggested that we start small and see where that would lead. And so we did, with his blessing and with great hope for the enterprise. We were guided in this initiative, of course, by our friend Lobsang Tenzin Negi, who has been the driving force of this partnership for nearly a quarter of a century. The second memory I carry from that 1995 visit is one that I didn't experience personally, but learned about later. It happened that Professor Fenton, who had extended that invitation in 1987, now was dying of leukemia. He was, in fact, in the hospital, too ill to attend the public teaching by His Holiness. But he was stunned to find the Dalai Lama coming to visit him in his hospital room, where this simple monk, as he calls himself, bent down to take a dying man in his arms, to embrace him, and to pray a special blessing in his behalf. Professor Fenton told his wife before he died that this was the high point of his all too brief life. From these two seeds, one a seed of hope about a partnership, and the other a seed of compassion toward a dying man. From these two seeds planted during the transition of our colleague and friend, Emory has been blessed to witness a prodigal, prolific season of growth and flowering and harvest. For more than 3 decades, we have been graced by the occasional presence, the teachings, and above all, the marvelous, compassionate example of His Holiness. He has given us new vision and courage to faithfully fulfill our mission in creating new knowledge and using knowledge in service to humanity. And so, having expended my time, let me then turn the microphone over to our teacher, professor, and friend, Your Holiness.
So, Dear brothers, sisters, as I mentioned earlier, I very much so impressed and moved. Number of institutions, number of people now really now showing interest about deeper level of human, I think, human nature, human being. That's very good. That's an encouraging sign. In 1959, I became a refugee. Then, new opportunity, meeting with many modern scholars, different field, and particularly science. So then, I think in 1973, I have the opportunity to visit Europe. Before go to Europe, now here, Maktaria, it seems not here. The BBC correspondent, Mr. Makhtali, he came to see me and asked me why you have some interest to visit Europe. Then I answer, I consider I'm citizen of the world. So then, 1973, visit Europe. Oh yes, materially highly developed. But then, meeting with many people, it's the same human nature. Sometimes the people outwardly very successful, but inward a lot of stress, unhappiness. So at that time, I express, now we need sense of global responsibility, and not think just oneself. So, in reality, think more about others' well-being. You get much benefit. Too much self-centered attitude, a lot of worry, a lot of anxiety. And then, naturally, we all part of the 7 billion human beings. If 7 billion human beings on this planet happy, then individual automatically feel much happier. Now, for example, daily when we look television, a lot of suffering, a lot of poor people, a lot of violence. And seeing these things, you are one of the human beings, and other human brothers, sisters, really unnecessarily passing through difficult life. So naturally, I think as a living human, social animal, if your next person, starvation, dying, you enjoy a meal here, how can you feel happy? We are social animal. Even other animal, social animal, like elephant or some other, they are one of their member dying. They also, you see, showing some kind of grievance. So we are human beings. You see, when we saw number of our brothers, sisters really passing through difficult sort of because of the situation. And then among them, like recent event in Africa, serious sort of flood, and some area, serious drought. These are beyond our control. But then Syria, Yemen, thousands of young children dying. These are our own creation. When we seeing these things, there is no possibility you feel calm or happy, because your same brothers, sisters, really unnecessarily passing through difficult period. That difficulty is also our own creation. Then we have to think more seriously. What was wrong? What is the real sort of the causes of these things? As I mentioned earlier, lacking sense of global responsibility. That finally, the sense of brotherhood, sisterhood. And finally, we really need sense of oneness of human being. As a social animal, is our brother, sister, showing a smile, showing happiness, you feel happy, and showing miserable sort of experience, you feel uncomfortable. So taking care about other is actually taking care of yourself. So therefore, now I want to say something. Time always moving. Of course, ancient Indian philosophical views, there are different views about time. Some say time is permanent, but generally say time is always changing, moving. So now, no force can stop. Time stands still. Time always moving. Now, past, we cannot change past. Only possibility is future, yet come. So now it is important to think about the future more seriously. If present sort of situation is okay, then no need botheration. But present sort of situation, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of suffering, pain, our own creation. Then basic nature of human being, as I mentioned yesterday, basic human nature is more compassionate. Because that we need. That's the basis of our survival, our affection. So biologically, we have the sort of ability to show affection to others. Then, as I already mentioned yesterday, now scientists also now say more compassionate mind here you get more inner peace. That's very important for our health, individual level, then family level, as I mentioned earlier. So therefore, there is a real sort of possibility to explore that basic human nature. Now the question, existing education, as I mentioned earlier, is not adequate. Is it to increasing, to preserve these basic human value. So therefore, now I think right time, we see people really showing concern about the inner value, compassionate sort of feeling. So in order to create a better future, education is the key factor. So therefore, now serious discussion about, you see, the education, not only oriented about material thing, but inward. So I think global level also, you see, they think more about the well-being of other, including environment. Then we human beings become more constructive. Just think oneself, selfish, narrow-minded. And then we human beings truly become destructive, like that. So now future, now you see we can change future. So I usually telling young people, the generation of 20th century, generation of 21st century. Now, the 20th century gone. We cannot change anything. We can learn what happened in 20th century. A lot of sort of suffering, a lot of killing. As I mentioned earlier, the First World War, Second World War, like that. And people, you see, violence is something important. Therefore, a lot of money spent in order to making destructive weapon. Waste of money, waste of time, and creates more fear, more hatred. Use violence, you can never solve the problem. So now, sometimes I describe the external disarmament important, but for that, internal disarmament is very, very important. More deeper awareness about our sort of mental sort of situation. Anger, no use, only destruction. Compassion. These things really brings inner strength, inner peace. So individual person, mental level, peaceful, then no matter what surrounding. So therefore, now in our education should include education or knowledge about our inner world, mainly I usually call a map of emotion. And then the sort of structure of our mind. So more sort of knowledge, these things, then when about some destructive emotion about to happen, you can tackle. As I briefly mentioned yesterday, our intelligence, wonderful. We have the ability to analyze external thing as well as internal our mind. So it is quite a pity. Existing education just oriented about material value. Therefore, now today's world, a lot of problem. So now, big question, whether this problem can reduce or not. Answer is yes. How? Change here through knowledge. So education, now future can change through our perceptions already, our mental attitude. So firstly, as I mentioned yesterday, I think already, this world eventually, you see, through education, create more sense of compassion, loving kindness. Then, ideologically or some sort of politically, you may find differences, but still respect them and through talk, try to find mutually agreeable solution. That always has happened. So then through that way, this century, unlike previous century, this century can be genuine, peaceful century. For that, this century should be century of compassion. Not talking about next life or some other thing, but day-to-day life. More compassionate mind, you get maximum benefit. So it is best way to take care of your own health, like that. So some of these knowledge mentioned in religious text, but we should take these things as academic subject, not a religious subject. So now we are free. Whether we repeat 20th century or think more wider way and use human intelligence properly and a more realistic way approach. So that's up to us. Now I'm already 84-year-old. So within few years, I will say goodbye. So, but the younger generation, you have to live on this planet. So, whether this 21st century can be happy century, peaceful century, harmonious century, you should make effort now. So, that's all. Now some question, discussions?
Panel discussion.
We do actually have about 20 minutes for questions. Would Your Holiness like to take some questions?
Oh, yes, okay.
So 20 minutes, let's.
Or sometimes I express, you see, as a student of Nalanda, we train logic. So our mind quite equipped, quite well equipped, make subtle level because of the distinction, and find contradiction. Yes, now question.
So we have two mics, one over here in the center, and the other one is towards the left. Please come to the mic for your question. And then we will take one from the center and then the other from the left, so we would alternate between the two mics. Yes, please.
Hi, Your Holiness. Good morning. First, I want to tell you I have some thank you notes.
Microphone, not.
Oh, it's not on.
Not working. Louder, louder.
Good morning. Yes, thumbs up now. Okay. Good morning, Your Holiness. First, I want to say I do have some thank you notes for you from my class that they wrote to you because they love the Sea Learning curriculum so much. So I'm hoping at some point these can make their way up there to you. I teach at a Quaker school.
Still louder, louder.
Oh, dear. Okay. I teach at a Quaker
strength.
school. I teach at a Quaker school in the United States. And while Quakers don't proselytize and we don't try to put our religion onto other people, we do educate both Quaker and non-Quaker children in the traditions and the testimonies of Quakers, which are peace, integrity, community, equity, and stewardship. One struggle that I am having right now in educating my second graders, so they're 7 and 8 years old, they're very little, is that as Quakers, we want to teach our children how to live in the world as we want it to be, which is the world that Sea Learning is trying to create, one full of compassion. But simultaneously, I feel it is important to teach them how to live in the world as it is. And what I'm struggling with is how and when it's appropriate to discuss current events with younger children in the context of helping them understand how important compassion is. The children I teach are very fortunate to not have experienced a lot of the hardships that they hear about on the news firsthand. But at the same time, I do feel that it's important for them to understand what is happening to other children their age to help foster their own compassion. So my question for you is, when and how do you think it's appropriate for teachers to kind of bring the real world into the educational setting for younger children in a way that's developmentally appropriate? And if you feel that the C curriculum gives us those prerequisites that we should introduce first before we bring up such deep and troubling topics for them.
I do not know. What is the key point, your question?
Key point. Is it developmentally appropriate, do you feel, to teach younger children about the hardships and the heartbreak that is happening in the world within the context of teaching about Sea Learning and teaching compassion?
Like other subject, from kindergarten, then up to university level, all those the same subject. The subject, secular ethics, but kindergarten level, more simpler way. Then, you see the higher sort of level. Then I think at university level, I think there are a lot of sort of material to study about emotion, about mind, as I mentioned briefly. These mainly come from Indian tradition. So therefore, but this is something universal thing. So in the West, these are the new subject, but worthwhile to study. So I think judging the students, so their mental sort of level, then from kindergarten level up to university level, I think the kasota gedu korpage tik charo.
So you
Gedu.
whether you teach along
Like other subject is like mathematics, kindergarten, more simpler, then it's more sophisticated, like that. So I think the study about psychology, these things also, it is quite vast subject, according to Indian tradition. And sometimes, if may I say so, sometimes I express Western psychology, compare ancient Indian psychology. Western psychology looks like a kindergarten level. So you should study. This is a vast subject, and then combine with the scientific finding. That's important. Should not rely on text or ancient Indian master said such and such and believe not that way. Use their sort of information, meantime combined with modern science. That's, I think, a proper way.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, Holiness. Next question. May I also make a request that if you could keep your short questions to the point, very short to the point. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Holiness. I think this is the same question in a way as my colleague, but short. You said, how can we be happy having a meal when others are starving? And if you could share a few more words of inspiration for us today. This morning I had a beautiful breakfast in this beautiful hotel, and I feel so grateful, and yet it still hurts my heart when I think about how can I be happy when I'm not doing something right now for the children in Yemen. So if you can share with us some of your words of wisdom today on how to be more happy when I'm having a beautiful meal and children are starving, so that when I go to my second graders and fourth graders, I can help answer that question from my heart.
Now, human loving kindness combined with intelligence, as I mentioned earlier, yesterday, just emotionally some kind of sort of attachment or loving kindness is sometimes, you see, brings more worry yourself. But combined with human intelligence, then you saw some sort of sad situation, then you yourself remain much worried, no help. So, when we see a lot of starvation, a lot of people, helpless people, then that should bring more enthusiasm, not sadness. Okay. Other animal, sad things happen, then they also join sadness. But we human beings, this intelligence, then, you see, think wider way and long-term way. Long-term sort of also interest, like that. So, sadness after seeing the others, that should translate more enthusiasm, more willpower, combined with human intelligence and how to solve that properly. So these we human beings can do. Okay. Yesterday I briefly mentioned. Now, next question.
In the interest of time, we will need to limit to only 2 questions. So we will have one from that end and that next one here, because we have another panel right after that.
Good morning, sir. Sir, I am from DPS Sonipat. So my question is that how can we spread the SEE learning in the rural areas as they are not connected online?
Kasa. I don't know. You have to find ways and means. Ka. Sonipat, I see. Yes, some area, the facility poor, difficult. So then, really, such sort of difficult situation, I don't know. You should, then, for the time being, you should pay more attention for how to make money. Not talking about peace of mind, but work hard. Meantime, making money also related with mental sort of wisdom, mental enthusiasm. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Sir, but can we have NGOs which are connected over there in rural areas so that we can have more connection to SEE learning?
Karsa. I think you should explore as much as possible. You should not
You should not feel discouraged.
Should make effort. Thank you.
Your Holiness, good morning. I wanted to address my question related to religion, because in the concept offered, religion has seen as maybe an obstacle from my perception. Maybe I'm wrong. So the general values of compassion and kindness are very accessible because they are in the human nature. And from my understanding, if you see spiritual people, they, I think, also try to live a life according to their belief, a belief that is outside just the scientific, reasonable world, and we know the science has taken a big part in substituting religions. But on the other hand, I think many people give hope and have a social commitment with religions and by their spiritual faith. And we know that through the mystics and Sufis and so many expressions of the divine, everyone can access this divine reality, and like Jesus said, me and the Father are one. So my question is, in this whole concept that is being offered today, which part is played by religion? I mean, truthful people, spiritual people who try to live this divine in themselves.
Kasa. We are, you see, approaching mainly secular way, not based on religious faith. So irrespective whether believer or non-believer, among the believer, this religion, that's secondary. The important is the essential message, that's love. So all major world tradition, you see, carry same message. And then differences, they use different method or different philosophical view. For example, creator, concept of creator is one method, one way. As I think briefly mentioned yesterday, God, nobody say angry God. God full of love, infinite love. So we all created by such a compassionate God. So that also very powerful. And then those tradition, no creator, but mainly according to Indian tradition, Atma, no beginning, no end. So the creator not relevant. So therefore, again, now everybody, you see, what's it? It is obvious, everyone, including insect, want joyful happiness, not suffering. So then, if you harm other, you get suffering. If you bring some happiness to other, you get benefit. That's according to law of causality. So ahimsa, karuna, come. So that also is a non-theistic religion, different way of approach, mainly law of causality approach. The aim is same, bring more compassionate human being. So that different philosophy, different way of approach is necessary because of, you see, different people, different mental disposition. Even within Buddhism, there are Vibhashek school of thought, Saudantic school of thought, Chitta Mantra school of thought, Madhyamika school of thought, and within these four, mainly you see, these two, Chitta Mantra and the Madhyamika, the subdivisions there, all are Buddhist. But because different mental disposition, so it is necessary to different philosophical views in order to strengthen their sort of kasauda, the positive sort of mental attitude, like that. And then those people who have not much interest about religion, that better remain atheist. Meantime, should be good human being. Then no problem.
Maybe in the end I might share something with you. My daughter is also going to school here in Delhi, and they have a slum project, and they have even been collecting rubbish, and people were observing them. What are these European people doing there? And they are trying to be passionate or be compassionate and feel the situation of people who live like this. And she said, I have these 2.5 years so much compassion with people on the street. Now I see their living conditions, I don't feel that anymore. We are all one, we are all part of the same family. So I think it must be even more than compassion, right? That really this we are one world society is getting to us all, yes.
This is very good. This is very good. Very good. Then 7 billion human beings. Kasa chromosome samarbe. Each 7 billion human being. I remember the word chromosome or something. Differences. So difference there, always there. Not neuron. Chromosome or something. I learned this word. One great scientist, he mentioned 7 billion human beings, different mentality there because of different 7 billion chromosomes, different. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Holiness.
You want one question? Yes?
Yeah. Excuse me. Mike.
Use. Yeah.
Last question.
The next kare.
Morning, His Holiness. I
It's okay.
come to help my friend to ask question in English. Her question is, compassion is our natural, but our current common sense in our society is that if greedy make us progress, but hatred can protect us from harmness. She wants to know why become this. And how do you want?
Existing society, very much materialistic society. That also related with basic modern education system, very much oriented about material value. That's a mistake. These days, I am telling, from kindergarten, we should include hygiene of emotion, education about hygiene of physical. Similarly, hygiene of emotion should include. From kindergarten level, then up to university level, we already sort of touched. So, I think we love money because we feel money brings something which you want, that will bring. So, the very purpose of these material value is inner peace. Material things ultimately cannot bring inner peace. Desire, anger, just the opposite. So therefore, we are lacking knowledge how to bring inner peace. Because of stable, long-lasting inner peace through training of mind, that we are lacking. So only just sensory level. So temporary satisfaction. We do not know the deeper level, mental level, how to develop wisdom combined with also the compassion, these things. So knowledge, I think very important, and particularly the modern society, quite sophisticated. So a lot of obstacles also there. So such period, such circumstances, wider knowledge, wider way, broader knowledge about the mental state is very necessary. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Holiness, for such an inspiring advice and insights this morning.
Yes.
Our world
Thank you.
certainly, as Your Holiness mentioned, is going through many difficulties, many problems, but we certainly can be hopeful for the better future. And through the vision that you have provided for educating the heart and mind, we certainly hope that this will make a difference. This journey for us, for sea learning, is just a beginning, and I would like to request, with my folded hands, on behalf of everyone here and our audiences wherever they are, kindly do remain with us for many more years to guide us and provide the inspiration for us. Thank you. Our next panel is on promoting the education of heart and mind regionally and globally, key lessons and strategies. And we have 3 international experts here. And to moderate, the chair of the session is Dr. Kimberly Shonut-Reichel. Dr. Shonut-Reichel is an applied developmental psychologist and a professor in human development, learning, culture areas in the Department of Education and Counseling Psychology. But most importantly, Dr. Shonut-Reichel is the foremost researcher in the field of social emotional learning. Her work and her research has provided the necessary insights and really shaped the field of social emotional learning that we have. She has been our one of the most important advisors, assisting us not only on the research, but also on the elements that are key to the social, emotional, and ethical learning curriculum. So I would now like to invite our panelists and Dr. Kimberly Shonut-Reichel, and she will introduce the other panelists. Thank you.
I think we're just waiting a minute. Hey, do you want to? Oh, good morning. Good morning, Your Holiness. It's wonderful to be here again with you today, and wonderful to be with all of you, to be a part of this very important panel of distinguished leaders in each of their respective fields. What I'm going to do just in a minute is introduce our panelists, and then prior to starting the conversation, we will watch a video, and I'll set up the video. So as Geshe-la mentioned, the title of this dialogue is Promoting the Education of the Heart and Mind Regionally and Globally, Key Lessons and Strategies. And we are truly, truly fortunate today to have the three leaders in each of their respective fields to share with us their perspectives and lessons and help us move forward. I'm going to start first by introducing Mr. Ajay Piramal, who is one of India's leading industrialists and philanthropists. He's a leader. He is a leader in responsible entrepreneurship with a strong focus on doing well and doing good. Welcome. Our next panelist is Dr. Ruben Apresian, who is a professor and head of the Department of Ethics at the Institute of Philosophy, Russian Academy of Sciences in Moscow, Russia. And finally, we have with us Mr. Luis Cabrera, academic director for the Centro Fox in Mexico. It's an institute that really contributes to the formation of ethical leaders who value the human spirit. And we'll be able to hear from each of them in a few minutes. But prior to beginning, we have one of our senior advisors for the Sea Learning program who was unable to be with us, Ms. Linda Lantieri. And Ms. Lantieri is one of the founding members of CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, and has been a leader in the field on social and emotional learning for decades. And so she was unable to be with us, but she's going to be able to be with us virtually. So we're going to just turn now to watch a video.
That I've been part of being a witness of sea learning coming to a place of fruition today. The whole world and all her children now have the possibility of nurturing inner values and grounding ethics toward love, compassion, mutual respect, and understanding as a regular part of their educational experience. I've been in the field of education close to 50 years, first as a teacher, then as an administrator, and finally as someone who spent a lifetime helping schools be places that educate not only the mind, but the heart and spirit as well. I want to thank you, Your Holiness, for sharing this same vision for the children of the world, and also making sea learning a reality through your support, encouragement, and wisdom. Over 20 years ago, when you, Your Holiness, began your connection, that's deep and abiding relationship with the Emory Tibet Science Initiative, a small group of us, including myself and Dan Goldman, who's been involved with the development of sea learning, also started what is now an international movement in education called Social and Emotional Learning, or SEL as we call it. SEL has created the fertile ground for what is being launched today. However, the sea learning framework has gone much deeper and much more expansive than SEL in several ways. Here are some of them. First, sea learning will touch the children of the world, not only one nation. Sea learning educates the heart through training the mind with new skills like attention training and critical thinking. It includes teaching about our shared humanity and an understanding of interdependence through systems thinking. Sea learning is grounded in ethics and inner values. Sea learning is universal in its approach. It can be shared by teachers, parents, and children worldwide. The sea learning framework and curriculum is a result of many hands, minds, and hearts. I have been closely involved with the project as a senior educational leader since its beginning, and it's been an honor and privilege working with the Emory team, some of whom are here today, a group of people who embody what this work is all about. My aspirations for sea learning and its global dissemination are big. Today, we are putting into the hands of educators all across the world the sea learning framework and curricula in almost 14 different languages. Current research has shown us that human nature is oriented toward kindness. And yet we do need the skills and dispositions that are taught in this curriculum to develop that inner regulation that helps us be able to be the kind of people we want to be. Individuals who are supportive of one's own well-being and the well-being of others. I leave you with a story from my years in the classroom with children. I was with a small group of 10-year-old children in New Orleans, Louisiana, in the United States. Unfortunately, I found out that every one of these children had personally seen someone either hurt or killed by gun violence. And at the same time they were learning these skills and dispositions we're talking about that the C learning espouses. I asked them how it was for them to learn this new way of being, and yet they were seeing and experiencing violence all around them. All of a sudden, one of those boys way in the corner there, whose name was Jason, he lit up and he began to smile. I asked him, what was he thinking? And he said, pretty soon we're going to be those grown-ups. And it's not going to be like that anymore. It can stop with us because we know there is a better way. C Learning is about to offer a better way to the children of the world and the teachers who will play a critical role. There's no telling how the world will change as a result of what's happening here. In thinking like Jason, if we as adults do our job, there may not be enough grown-ups who wish to settle their conflicts, or the world's for that matter, with a blade, a gun, or a bomb. We are ready for a world where we help children and adults see that every single person is our brother or our sister, part of the human family. And I have no doubt that the C Learning will help play an integral part in making that happen. It's been so amazingly delightful to be part of this program, and I am so grateful that it is getting released to the world today. Thank you.
Great, wonderful, thank you. And I'm going to start by posing my questions to Mr. Piramal. Wonderful to meet you, and thank you so much for being here today. You've heard now about the importance of educating the heart and the importance of these skills of being able to manage emotions, get along with others, resolve conflicts as being important in education. What I'm wondering is, how do you see the role of these skills in business, and even in a larger society in India?
Your Holiness, and my distinguished panelists and ladies and gentlemen, Namaste. Today is the Hindu New Year, so I feel very blessed to be in the presence of Your Holiness, who is really the embodiment of love, compassion, and kindness. So thank you for giving this opportunity, Your Holiness. I began my talk by saying Namaste. There is a meaning of Namaste. It comes from, it's a combination of Sanskrit words. Namo means not me. And when we say Namaste, it means that it's not me, but you, and that we are bowing down to the values that you have. So it's again this deep meaning that there is no ego, and that we are humble, and that we respect the other person's values and ethics that they practice. So that is the center, I think, of the Indian tradition which His Holiness spoke to us about. And I want to just relate to you a story. This is the story of a small village in Rajasthan where this teacher, Sunita ji, has a class of 30 children. It's a government school, so they're not children from very affluent societies. And what you found in this school was that Sunita ji was always very angry with the students. She was very often, she would punish them, beat them, abuse them, because she felt they were not learning well. Consequently, the students also did not like coming to class. There was huge absenteeism, and many of them would actually drop out. And this is a time when people from our foundation started working in these schools. And we found that with proper training, by showing some videos of how it was, and actually just facilitating with the teacher, that a sea change could take place. So what was the foundation of this change, and what did we try to do? And that is really derived from everything what His Holiness spoke today. We believe at the core that everybody has goodness. And actually all people want to do good. But somehow we are stuck in systems which prevent us from doing this. Our belief in the foundation is that all can change, and that actually true happiness, as what His Holiness said this morning, comes from this seva bhav, seva as in service. The attitude of serving others is what gives you true happiness. And what we did as a result of this is, what we found is that the school at the end of this program became a better institution. The students were happier. The teacher was also happier at home. So what His Holiness said this, it doesn't only remain confined to the class or confined to the students. Actually, it went all over the society, in the families. And this is what is an example that we've done. And the result of this has been that we found that the admissions in school started going up. In fact, the district which we first started working in Rajasthan, called Jhunjhunu, had the highest enrollment of children in public schools. In fact, the Prime Minister also acknowledged this when he visited the district, because people started coming back to government schools. Helping these teachers to change this is something which I want to spend a few minutes on. And that is a fellowship that we have, where we recruit students who have completed either their graduation or post-graduation, and they come and work for 2 years with us, and they work in societies and where they are underprivileged people. And I want to give you just the story of this young boy. He was a graduate, an engineering graduate from one of the top engineering schools in the country. Then he went and did a master's, and then came to our fellowship. He came from a middle-class family, but in our fellowship we have people from all strata of society. He came to work and live with these people, the other fellows, And we remember that the first few months that he came, he was really out of place because he wanted an AC room, he wanted his own car, he would almost always fight with people. Till we put him in what we call a community immersion program. This is where you go and live with underprivileged communities. You actually go and live in their homes. And he had to go and live in a slum in Ahmedabad, live with those people, work with those people, and then go to schools to help headmasters to become better leaders. What he found is actually during his program, that these people who had so little for themselves to eat were also willing to share, were willing to share whatever little they had with him. And this had such a profound effect on him. The compassion and the love that he found from underprivileged children, from underprivileged families, that changed his life. And he went on to now actually work in societies with tribal children in some of the tribal districts in Rajasthan and actually make them get the children to have a positive frame of mind. And if you want to meet this young man, I think he's here, he's on your organizing committee. His name is Vivek. So are you here, Vivek? Can you just stand up once? There he is. So this is the impact that these programs can have. And now I think we have working today, as far as our schools are concerned, we are working in 14 states of the country. We are working with about 50,000 teachers in the most challenging, 50,000 schools of the most challenging districts in India, and touching about 10 million children, all with this whole purpose of trying to see how you can spread love, compassion, and the heart and the mind together. And people like Vivek, today we have almost 1,500 of them in this country. We believe to take this to 7,000 in the next 5 years.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that inspirational message and story, and just really such great gratitude for all that you're doing. I'm now going to turn the discussion over to Dr. Ruben Prasian to give us some of your perspectives as we move forward to educate the hearts and minds of children.
Thank you, Your Holiness, dear colleagues and friends. It's my honor to be here with the opportunity to share my impressions and thoughts. I became acquainted with social and emotional learning conception last year in Dharamsala at the 33rd Mind and Life Dialogue. By that time, I was acquainted with the conception of emotional intelligence and the debates about compassion between Western and Buddhist scholars, and of course with the conception of secular ethics by His Holiness. But the idea of bringing these complex ideas to educational practice impressed me deeply, and especially, I am a philosopher, I am a researcher, I am not an educator. From time to time I run trainings for teachers, but research my main form of activity, and I realized the potential of this conception of social and emotional learning for moral theory and for the conception of morality and for practice of moral education. It's really very, very high potential. I would say that the conception of C-learning is challenging for moral philosophy, and it requires rethinking of the concept of morality and the concepts reflecting different moral phenomena. So far they're rather abstract, and it's a special task to bring these abstract notions to practice. And the main contribution of this conception and of this approach is to demonstrate deep connection between abstract ethical ideas, ethical principles, and interpersonal experience, emotional experience, communication experience, social practice. And it's a very interesting phenomenon, I would say, that what is doing in practice is, I mean, in educational practice, reversing influence theory. So I'm very, very grateful to this opportunity to become acquainted with this approach, and this is a task for me. Now I want to turn to some impressions on education in the region I represent in Russia. Yesterday we were shown a map of dissemination of CE learning programs, and Russia was like a white spot on that map, or terra incognita for CE learning. It's not completely true. First, I must say that the programs of social emotional learning have been developed in Russia. For example, during the last 3 years, about 250 teachers passed special trainings regarding social emotional learning, and about 3,000 students were involved in this teaching. The pilot project has been run in Moscow and Tyumen city, so this is a rather prospective experience. Of course, it's mainly social and emotional learning, and an ethical component should be added there, but still it's a real basis and a good starting point for developing that. And I must mention that in some extent, this program was related to tech castle paradigm, and they of course used in full scale the Emory materials. So I would suggest to add that to the map we were shown yesterday. But I must say that the social emotional education usually was one of the main tasks in education. I mean, traditionally and in the past, in the starting maybe from the middle of the 20th century, it was a particular task. Of course, it was incorporated in more general educational paradigm, and in Soviet times, it was, of course, also filled with certain ideology, but still social emotional development or social emotional education was considered as one of the main tasks in personal development of child. And I want to point your attention to a very interesting experience associated with a famous teacher of the 50s, 60s. I mean the Soviet Ukrainian teacher Vasily Sukhamlinsky, very famous for his practice and also for his books. He wrote a number of books, and by the way, one of this book, the most famous one, called "To Children I Give My Heart." To children I give my heart. You see, it's absolutely, coherent to our ideas now. It was twice translated into English, done separately, published by 2 different Western publishers. So for Vasily Sukhamlinsky, and mentioning Ukrainian teacher, I know that there is a delegation from Ukraine here, and mentioning, hello. Yes, it's just an opportunity for me to express my warm greetings to my Ukrainian colleagues. And so I want to say that for Sukhamlinsky, if you look through his book, emotional development was put in direct connection to moral development. But there is a difference. And the difference is that Sukhamlinsky associated emotional and moral development of children with their practice in community, dealing with elderly people, disabled people, poor people. And this is very interesting, I think, practical experience, but I found no elaborated methodology in their books. There's very rich description of pedagogical practice, very heartful relations of the teacher and students, but not elaborated methodology. And what we see in C learning programs, and I had an opportunity to read Companion and the elementary book, I see and I highly appreciate the methodological level of these teachings. So still, I'm mentioning Sukhomlinski, that traditions, I want to say that so far we're thinking about global expansion or dissemination of C learning program. We should take into consideration national heritage, educational heritage, national teaching traditions, and national normative traditions. And related to, do I have a minute or two? I want to mention one thing. It's a separate, maybe more theoretical and theoretic normative issue of normative completeness of the program, which is proposed in Companion and in related books. I was told by my colleagues and experts in Buddhism that the Buddhist concept of compassion includes a number of ideas relevant to the Western concept of justice. But from the Western point of view, or from Christian point of view, and also from the point of view of cultural and normative traditions related to Islam, the concept of justice is really very important. And my concern that in the Companion I see not enough contribution to exploration of the concept of justice. I use this, quantitative analysis looking to the book. I found only 4 cases of mentioning the word justice in the negative form of injustice in Companion. I found no mentioning of justice in the elementary book. So far, we're thinking of expansion these programs to regions and where the concept of justice is so important. I think, and maybe basing on the online platform, that elaboration of the concept of justice, not as just equity and not just as fairness, but justice as such would be very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your remarks, Dr. Apresian, and we are going to change that map, I promise.
Thank you.
Got to get that going on that. And now it is my great pleasure to talk to Dr. Luis Cabrera, who is going to share with us some of the work that he is doing in Mexico.
Sure. Thank you. I'm certainly not a doctor. I'm just Luis Cabrera, okay. But thank you for the title.
I gave you point one.
Yeah, I will someday. It's on my bucket list. President Fox and Mrs. Marta, say hello to Your Holiness. I'm really happy to be here. I'm really grateful for those that invite me. And I want to share what we are doing in Mexico and what we want to do also in Latin America. And I have to say that when we had the chance to read and to know about the C Learning program, I find myself really impressed, because we thought we find a soul program in something that we were exploring. And we had the chance to have this amazing talk to Geshe and to figure out how it's possible that 2 programs around the world are seeing the same problem and trying to solve it through compassion and love and peace. So I have some slides that I would love to share with you. It's really, really fast what I will try to do here. So, yeah, I think we can start with a short video. It's a 1.4 minutes video.
mí, Cíclica es una educación que todos deberíamos de tener.
Es un programa muy completo porque desarrolla habilidades en los estudiantes y desarrolla conocimientos sobre el medio ambiente.
Abarca muchas áreas, es transdisciplinario.
El descubrir cosas nuevas con mis niños, el descubrir su creatividad y su preocupación porque sea mejor nuestro planeta. Un programa necesario y fundamental para todas las escuelas, para poder darles una conciencia a los pequeños.
A los estudiantes les ha ayudado muchísimo tener actividades de manera continua para sensibilizarlos en su conocimiento de cómo cuidar el medio ambiente y sobre todo de una manera divertida.
También fomenta esta parte de valores de los niños, de responsabilidad.
Crear conciencia de manera creativa, de manera divertida, que aprendan mucho de lo que fue su pasado y lo importante que es su futuro.
Lo recomiendo porque es un programa que nosotros como una institución internacional hemos implementado y hemos visto el impacto en nuestros estudiantes y en sus acciones que llevan al día. Nos ha hecho un mejor colegio, ha hecho a los estudiantes mejor y a nuestra comunidad también.
Well, sorry, it's in Spanish, as you figured out. There was supposed to be some subtitles on it, but we couldn't make it happen. Well, what I want to share today is just a story of Cíclica, our program, and how we share the spirits, and we're really enthusiastic on being your partners to make this go to every corner in Mexico and hopefully in Latin America. Let's talk about the sad story. And the sad story it has something to do with so many things that we already talked in the past 1.5 days. We are facing exponential problems. There's so many, I just put some of them that are directly related on what we are trying to solve at Cíclica. And I think the Sea Learning program is bigger than this. We're a sustainability program, so we're trying to figure out how to handle problems about water, pollution, violence, global warming, garbage, and stuff like that. But for so many years, maybe decades, academics, entrepreneurs, innovators have provided solutions in trying to build a better world. And when I say that I want to share a sad story with you is I've been teaching for the last 12 years. I'm 35. I've been teaching since I'm a student. I got to law school, and after that, I find myself facing the entrepreneurship as a way of life. So I started teaching, and I met this incredible guy named Victor. Victor is the founder, is the mind behind Cíclica. He was my student. And for me, he's one of these superheroes, you know, the people that are trying to change the world through doing something. And after 4 or 5 years after he passed through my class, entrepreneurship class, we were sitting eating some tacos in Mexico. And we had this brief conversation about a moment on the table that for me was life-changing. He was a high middle class guy from Mexico. He has studied at Tec of Monterrey, one of the top schools of Mexico, and private schools for sure. And we were sitting there, and after the waitress bring the tacos to the table, he made this kind of prayer on the taco. For me, it was kind of funny because I didn't recognize Victor as a religious guy. So after he finished, I asked him, Victor, do you pray? And he says, after starve for a couple weeks, I say thank you to every meal. Why I want to share this with you is because right now we are facing exponential problems, but we're trying to solve them with arithmetical solutions. Entrepreneurs, innovators, politicians are arithmetical. So we only have two options here, is what we see, and is why we see the C learning as an amazing platform. We could increase the superheroes ratio. It's really hard. You can see that Avengers are not so many, right? Or we can try to reduce the superheroes' needs. And what we think is that we must break the wheel, and the way to break the wheel basically is through compassion. So at Central Fox, we are leading a new way to see leadership. We don't find a leader like this guy that moves thousands of people behind him. We believe in the leader by itself. Everyone can be a leader. Right now, we are helping around 12,000 kids every year. So far, 200,000. Cyclica is a new program, but right now we are helping also plus 3,000 kids every year. And we are really, really enthusiastic about bringing now the C learning to our platform and help you and help everyone to get this knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luis. And so now we're going to just turn to a bit of a general discussion. And one of the things that strikes me is that we now have the science that really shows us that you can educate the heart. These skills are malleable. We also have the science really showing us that you can integrate them into education, and they actually increase academic achievement. They don't take it away. We also know that, in fact, you can, that students who learn social and emotional and ethical skills have both short-term and long-term outcomes. They make more likely to graduate from high school, earn a college degree, find stable employment. So the question is, to each of you, why aren't we just doing it? What are the barriers to scaling up, to expanding this notion of social, emotional, and ethical education? And I'll start with you, Mr. Parimal, if you have some answers and insights or suggestions for us, strategies.
I'll just try and explain what we are trying to do, because we also appreciate that it is scale that makes a difference. So how our foundation works is that we believe that if you have to do anything in scale, it cannot be done in a closed environment of whatever you are doing. And so just like how I see that the whole C learning and the curriculum is an open platform, we also believe that it's an open platform, and more people, like-minded people, need to get together. So I just want to congratulate His Holiness and the organizers for bringing so many together. That's what we do. The second thing, I believe that scale, at least in India, you can only reach scale if you work with governments, because there is no foundation or nobody who could do it all on their own. India is a large country. And therefore, to do it in scale, the basic understanding, again, that we believe that we have is that people in government also want to do good. If we tell them, if we bring this compassion, they're also as compassionate. So we do it on, with partnerships with government. In fact, today we are working with 22 governments, state governments in the country across various fields. So we believe that the only way to do, that we need to do scale, the way to do it is to have an open platform to get other like-minded institutions, NGOs together, and then work with government to try and do it. Another way we can also do it is through changing in policies to bring this up. So that if you can demonstrate, which I'm sure a program like the SEAL will demonstrate, then you can go and talk to governments to see that the curriculum has this as an important part, which is also what we are trying to do now, to see that it is part of the government programs as well.
Great, thank you so much. Those are some really great strategies. As we think about moving it globally, and I'll turn now to, and I'll now turn to Dr. Apresian. What are some of the challenges or barriers you see in Russia in scaling social and emotional learning?
Well, there are general tasks in Russia as the whole world, and I think that to answer your question why we're doing this, we're doing this for the sake of bringing the principles of peace, toleration, non-violence to children's hearts, to prepare peaceful, tolerant, and non-violent citizens. And this is very, very important task, social task, political task, but also ethical task. Of course, we have, I think our hopes for perspective is not so sure. So it's a long-term task, but this is very, very important task. But at the same time, speaking about emotional learning and emotional development, I think we should guarantee ourselves from sentimentalism in relations to people. All these videos we've seen today and yesterday, they're very impressive, they're moving. Children are very cute there, very nice. But another side of that, and I'm afraid of too much sentimentalism. So I would like, of course, this is a display, and what is behind that, it's a real story. But it's very important to bring into classrooms and to bring into practice real life and understanding the force, for example, the force of conflicts and how students influence each other in the situation of conflict. For example, in the Companion, I refer again to this book so far, that was my top reading last week. In the Companion, there is a lot about self-regulation, but it is too little about mutual regulation. And we know from psychological experimental studies that kids learning mutual regulation in conflicts which are not oppressed, but in conflicts which are explored, if they're constructive conflicts. Being in the negative, psychologically negative situation of a conflict, a child feels a need to regulate it, to contribute to it, to influence another. Of course, it's a situation, at the same time, it's a situation of competition of interests, which is very sharp situation and could be with negative psychological and ethical results. But still, this is a fragment of real life, and we must be very, very careful for preserving this situation, because it's very rich and potential for child's development.
Thank you. So now I turn over to Mr. Luis Cabrera. And you've been working in this area. What do you see as both of some of your successes and some of the challenges that you're facing in Mexico to bring this forward?
Sure. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have faced is the polarization between the public education and the private education, the poor and the rich, the one and the others, you know? Because what we have found is, for example, if we are trying to bring these programs to the public education since the beginning. And we do it through a foundation, so we give up some free programs so we can get in to the public education. Because there's no way for us right now to make the system not understand, but to pursue the same dreams that we are trying to pursue, because their interests are in other places. So what we had found right now is that the top schools in Mexico understand what we are trying to do. And it's not enough, because what we are doing right now is just making the bridge bigger. The gap between the ones and the others is getting bigger, because what we are providing through these kind of programs are making, we believe, a huge difference on the education of these guys and not the other guys. And we need to make it happen for all. So, in one hand, polarization. On the other hand, what we have learned is that we have been trying to teach the kids with so many models for the last centuries. And we have stopped watching the kids and let them teach us about how we imagine the world can be. I disagree with the doctor when he says that we need to show the reality, the real world to these kids so they can learn. I think if that's the approach, we already fail. We need to learn from them that our reality is not the only possible reality.
Yes, join in.
There was just one thing I wanted to add, that our institution is now working with the Harvard School of Education for the 21st century. What's the education and the non-cognitive one? So we are one of the global centers of excellence that they are looking at to create this non-cognitive learning so that it can be spread internationally. We're also working with an OECD committee, again, to see how we can assess this non-cognitive part as well. So that's how one of the ways to internationally spread it, which I thought I'd just mention.
That's great. Thank you so much for that contribution. So now thinking forward, thinking again about some strategies and lessons, and thinking about the barriers, but thinking about what are some specific strategies you might see. I'm very curious in terms of example, how do you convince the leaders? How do you convince the policymakers that this is worth doing? And if you have any, I think we all want to know the answer to that.
So I think it's just by demonstration, and we've been able to demonstrate. So one of the things that is, how do you measure school learning levels? And you take samples of those schools where you've done this sort of teaching and in others that have not, and in the traditional. And we found that uniformly, that over a period of time, that the school learning outcomes in those schools where we've taught heart and mind are actually much better. And this has been measured by many independent agencies, whether it is there are several now which are available here in India, and they've invariably found that. We found that if you can do that, and if you can do that on scale, then even the people in the policy makers are willing to do that. And this has meant that if you look at the new education policy in India, people are now started talking about how you need to do assessment in this manner. So that's how change takes place. In education, as you know, it takes time. nothing is going to be overnight. It takes a few years, but I feel confident that one can do that.
Thank you. Well, I think that certainly aligns with His Holiness's vision that research and science are so important to have alongside the programs, and that is really something with a part of C Learning that is really going to have research to demonstrate, to examine what are the benefits of those children who have and who do not. I think it's an essential framework, and I guess I'm a bit biased because I am a researcher, so I can't help with that. So now I'm trying to look forward and thinking, imagine the future. Let's go, time travel into, let's say, 10, 20 years. And we have this vision of children all having the experience of curriculum like C Learning. What do you predict in the world? What would we see?
Okay.
Jump in there.
Yeah, I will. I absolutely agree with the demonstration part. So when I look forward 30 years from now, I have to talk about, I have a 4-year girl, and I try to imagine her 30 years from now. I'm talking about showing, like, with facts, with walking the talk, as someone says, is that Luisa, she is 4 years old right now, and somehow she is living with me and with Cyclica since she was really, really young. So what I have learned is that through her, we start making some changes in our community. And you will say, how? And for example, Luisa has this new habit, not because I asked her, because one day she decided we should stop using the car to go to the school. And a couple days after that, she told me, Dad, can we bring some bags and start making some plugging from garbage from the street? So once every week, when I'm at Mexico, we walk with some garbage bags, and we get into the school and present them. And that's why after several months that the people start looking at us doing that, the people take the program into the school. So what I'm trying to say and trying to, thank you, to imagine that world is that I'm sure that Luisa and the little guys like Luisa, if they adapt these kind of habits of well-being and compassion with the world, I'm sure that in 30 years from now, the world is going to be better, because there's going to be so many good humans down there. We need to stop stealing humanity from the kids.
Any reflections on the idea of what would the future of the world look like? What would India look like, actually?
I don't know what... I think what we are trying to do is just to make a positive difference to the world around us. To the extent we can go on expanding this circle that we are around, that will be... I think that's what we are trying to do. Whether... how many, India is 1.3 billion today, how many we impact, I'm not sure. But I think we just go on doing it. Hopefully people will also see that and get inspired. That's the only thing I can do. And especially people in business, because I believe that unless you have a strong business, you can't do good. Because you have to, in some ways, people sometimes, especially in the development world, have this thing that business is not good, it's evil, and we are the only good. But we need to recognize that it's only business where when you create wealth, can you then therefore do good as well. So that's what we believe, that how we can, by example, inspire both business and the social world to work together to do better. That's
Thank you. Thank you so much for that work. And I can't help but think of what the future employees will be like and future leaders will be like if we have this approach that's embedded as a regular part. Dr. Presian, do you have any thoughts about the future?
But from today. My hope is that children which are trained in this paradigm of social, emotional, and ethical learning will try to change the society and to establish a new world. And this is very important in following extent. C-learning orients children on common values, common interests, common good, and it is very natural within the class community, within the school community. But when they are out, when they are going, so to say, to adult life, they're becoming economic agents, means the agents of private interests. So how to arrange the society, how to arrange the legislation, economic relations to make private interests work for common good. This is very, very important political, social task, but also psychological and ethical task. So my hope is that this program will give quite different alternative outlook for future generation, and maybe it will work.
Thank you so much. So, and now just turning to thinking about some, any last thoughts, recommendations. You have the world listening, not only here, all of the people who are here from 37 countries, but also the webcast and things. And so the opportunity to think about what would be your advice, your closing thoughts of things maybe you haven't been able to say yet as we move forward, to think about how do we move forward with educating the hearts and minds of children, both locally and globally, to build a better world. So maybe I'll start with Louise.
Okay, I'm not sure if I don't like to give advices, you know, but what I have to say that we need to put more attention on the kids, learn from them, and maybe giving away our arrogance as adults, and to figure out that something in the model that we design is not working, and because it's not working, we need to change it. So we better learn from the guys, the little guys, that somehow they figure it out and they do it awesome. So there's a lot of knowledge on being a kid.
Thank you. Okay.
We are inspired by the words of Swami Vivekananda, who was a great master from our tradition here. And he had said that, give me 1,000 young people and I will change, then India will change and become a much better society. So that is the inspiration for us to start our fellowship, and we saw Vivek as just one example. So we believe that if we can give this country 7,000 of these young, youthful people who are dedicated, whose life is dedicated to service of love, compassion, and to the nation, then India will be a better place. That's our inspiration.
Dr. Presian?
Well, our main focus on children that they should be taught, but the question, who will teach them? And so the starting point are teachers. And in dissemination, the C learning program could be, the success of this dissemination could be provided only by teachers who should be taught. And this is a very, very difficult task. Well, I can share my experience of dealing with teachers at teachers training. Very often they are professionally good equipped with well-developed professional skills, highly motivated professionally. They're very nice, but rather often I face the problem that the level of their ethical awareness is not sufficient. Is not sufficient for them as citizens, but much more is not sufficient for such kind of tasks. I don't know why it's so. Maybe I have a suspicion that at teachers' trainings, they become from teachers, they become students. And becoming students, they're, changing their minds and their attitudes. They feel as if themselves, as if students. And maybe they recover their childhood and students' schemes of thinking. Maybe so. But my impression that the level of their ethical awareness is not always sufficient. My main concern about preparing, training, and teaching teachers.
You raise a really important issue of teacher preparation, and I work in that area, and I would say that there are probably just a handful of programs in the world that actually embed social and emotional learning within teacher preparation. So they do not learn any of this. They mostly focus on the curriculum. So I think that's another way to really move forward. Now, we're coming to an end here, and we have really just really at a momentous event here to be part of the C Learning launch with His Holiness. And you have been the inspiration for the social, emotional, and ethical learning program. And I wonder, as we say goodbye to you for today, if you have any final comments or reflections?
I really feel tired. So, only thing, rest. So I think important is, in order to open human intelligence, first, see the reality, today's reality. Then raise question, today's reality, if this continuously go, lot of problem. Then the question, can change this or not? If not, then doesn't matter. There is Shantadeva's sort of expression. When we passing through some difficulties, analyze this situation. If there is a way to overcome, then no need sad, make effort. If there is no way to overcome that problem, then no use sad. Okay. I think very practical. So now, analyze whether this today's situation of the world, you really feel satisfied, then okay, no problem. But that is obviously not. So then the next question, whether can change this or not? Certainly can change. Through thinking. 7 billion human beings, becoming more compassionate, peace-loving, then will change. That prayer, over 1,000 years, pray, nothing happened. So now time, our own action. In order to carry that action, motivation. So in order to develop proper motivation, then too much self-centered motivation, not much helpful. Think global level, other 7 billion human beings. So through education, we can change our sort of mental attitude. So, когда这开的讲自己的，可对呢，给的讲，以前呢，讲卡的话，给卡的话，但都是自己过。
So the important thing is to weigh the pros and cons of things. What's the benefit of doing something and what's the disadvantage of doing something?
现在他开始通用的咱呢，但得同一个逻辑个。
So once you see the benefit of doing something, the advantage of doing something, then you will have the aspiration to, carry it out.
但这里啊，结果就得见忙过去了，对你住在印度咱呢，但第一里就得见你的心处要钱呢，他是些话的啥，没住些人有啥。
So since things happen through various different conditions, causes and conditions, you need to see what conditions are conducive to certain things to achieve something. And if there is possibility to achieve that goal, then you should pursue it. If not, then you should leave it.
I think next 1 century, I think if we make some effort, we can we can create happier world. After that, due to global warming, we will go. According to some ecology scientists, they really, you see, recently one sort of meeting with mainly ecology, ecology 말해, 다른 사람 그 써야 돼. 그래서 다른 사람 써야 돼, 알래? Environment. Mainly some Chinese scientists, and one's 그 명도 가서. This is not the Shingri. That Chinese scientist, great scientist, he also is got Nobel laureate or something. He expressed after 80 years, then the world may disappear. And anyway, global warming is now reality. So after a few decades, I think world, there is real danger, is burning. So then that is beyond our control. So next few decades, I think that is the real danger. And then also, according to the scientists, the whole galaxies, our galaxies, the direction, the same direction, another sort of galaxy is now coming. So sooner or later, crash. So therefore, so now while we alive, better live happily, harmoniously. Killing each other due to small sort of
Microbes.
small sort of benefit, short-sighted, narrow-minded, and killing. Senseless. So to such people, I think better to say, now world is ending. No use to killing each other. Really. So even you see, a few decades, let us, you see, live happily, and those people who loves drink and won't drink. Okay. So things are quite serious, I feel. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Your Holiness, for those wonderful parting thoughts. And I want to, again, thank our wonderful panel here who really provided many very important comments to us. Thank you. Join me again in thanking them.
Thank you.
So just to wrap up our morning session, in this theme of global dissemination, there are many materials available that you can pick up. The companion book in multiple languages, our C-Learning brochure in multiple languages, so that you can take those with you and share. We will also have a question and answer session this afternoon, and we will place a basket outside so that when you come back from lunch, please drop your questions into that basket, and we will be curating some of those to share in the afternoon. And lastly, I thank our esteemed panelists and, of course, His Holiness for his guidance and inspiration. Thank you very much.